We're going into our second week of this Explore God series. And if you're just jumping in this week, first of all, I'm so happy you're here. If you were here last week, I'm happy you're back again. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary. Cannot believe how fast that year flew by, but these are great days we are in, and great days are ahead of us. But we are digging into 7 huge questions in these weeks. 7 big questions that we pretty much all have about faith and our journey with God and our walk with Him. We have doubts, we wonder about things, and so we're walking through this together and looking at these things together. Last week, we looked at a huge question: what is the purpose of life? Or does life have a purpose? Does life have a meaning? And we went into the book of Ecclesiastes, where a very intelligent, wise man named Solomon wrote this book about the meaning of life. And he opens up the chapter and he begins with, "It's all meaningless." It's all meaningless. Life is but a vapor. And he talks about how he pursued wisdom and knowledge, and he pursued wealth, and he pursued anything his heart desired. And yet it all came back to something just fleeting, something just temporary. And so the end of the conclusion of that matter that he brought us to at the close of Ecclesiastes is that our purpose is found in God alone and to follow Him. And so I recommend, if you want to go back and you didn't hear that message, go back onto our YouTube and you can watch it there and listen to it. But today is in the same line, same vein, so to speak, in the same direction. And it really is a question that some of us can think, oh yeah, I can answer that quick. And others of us are like, I'm not really sure about this one. But this question is, why believe there is a God? Why believe there is a God? Now, our belief in the existence of God has enormous implications for our lives, humanity, morality, our destiny, our purpose, that meaning that we talked about. Have you ever thought about the fact that the idea of God is almost impossible to avoid in life? If you take you back to your childhood, what did you do when you're a little kid in school? I don't know, maybe you didn't do it, but I did it almost every single day in elementary school. We would put our hand on our heart and stand and look at a flag and say, that's right, the Pledge of Allegiance, right? And in that pledge, not only are you pledging allegiance to the wonderful United States, what are you pledging? In God, right? Under God. There's a powerful line and moment there, seeding every kid in a generation, every person with a reality: is there a God? Is there a God? Or what happens when you go to pay for money, or a little, the tooth fairy, because you've lost a tooth and brings you money and puts it under your pillow. Anybody have the tooth fairy come and visit them? Some of you looking at me, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so this thing we have going on, as parents, child loses tooth and they'd stick it. Oh, I'm sorry, are there kids in here? Okay, no kids. It's like telling things. They would stick the tooth under the pillow, right? And they'd wait for the tooth fairy to come, and the tooth fairy would exchange the tooth and slide some money underneath. But I tell you what, the tooth fairy in my house was rich. I mean, I don't know what happened. My husband set the bar. I'm like, what are you doing? And so he did $1 for one tooth. The second tooth was $2, $3. I mean, we got to $18. I'm like, I don't even have this cash on me. So the tooth fairy might take a whole month to appear, my kids would stop checking, to see. Oh, anyway, so when you get that money, back to the story, when you get that money, you open it, and on that dollar, on that money is these words: in God we trust. In God we trust. Or maybe you're like, those don't even relate to me. You text somebody and something just wows you, or something astounds you, and you write back, OMG. Now, some of you have made this nice, and you're like, that's not oh my golly, oh my goodness, but that's actually oh my God. What? Like in a good way, bad way, wherever you want to put it. But we use this in our society today. So the idea of God is really impossible to avoid. And according to recent surveys, about 80% of our society today believes in God or a higher power. They believe that there is a God. 80%, that's a high number, or a higher power. And we can probably conclude that most people at some point in their life, if not at many point, think about God. Even those 20% who identify as agnostic or atheists, my guess, at some point in their life have questioned whether there be a God in the universe. And it's a question that we still wrestle with today. Now, some of that 20% perhaps take and think this, that people reject that there could be a God because it's only those people who accept that there's a God that are uneducated, old-fashioned, or gullible who really believe that truly a God exists. But however, some of the most intelligent people, some of the wisest people in history and influential people of history believed in a God. Let's see if you recognize this person that comes up on the screen this morning. Oh, do you know who that is? Smart Albert Einstein. Did you say it with a little twang or something there? Einstein. She said Albert Einstein was one of the greatest and most influential physicists of all time. And I have this quote of him saying this: everyone who is seriously committed to the cultivation of science becomes convinced that in all the laws of the universe is manifest a spirit vastly superior to man, and to which we with our powers must feel humble. So he is talking about the existence of a higher power, God himself. Not just scientists, though, but activists in our generations have talked about and recognized that God exists. Here's another person that you may recognize. Yeah, these are drawings of these people, but one of our most prominent social activists of the last 100 years, Martin Luther King Jr., what does he say? He says, "So I say to you, seek God and discover him." Have you been in a discovery process of God? Yes. Did you bring your hunger this morning? Yes. Good. Discover him and make him a power in your life. Without him, all our efforts turn to ashes and our sun rises into darkest nights. Without him, life is a meaningless drama and the decisive scenes missing. But with him, we are able to rise from the fatigue of despair to the buoyancy of hope. With him. Perhaps this picture, and I had to put his name up because you wouldn't know who this was. I don't think you would know. Do you know this next guy? Oh, I put his name there. You got it, Francis. Thank you. I know, I helped you out. It's like a teacher. I know. Redo that slide. But do you know what he's famous for? American physician. Yeah. Geneticist who discovered that genes associated with a number of diseases led the Human Genome Project. He was the director of the National Institutes of Health in Maryland, and I want to look at a video this morning of how he describes his journey, not just believing in a God,
it was Lewis's argument
the God
about the moral,
of the Bible.
It was Lewis's argument.
This is not the right
law
video.
Has told me to do one thing, and
It's all good. No, but it's okay. It's okay. That's great, and that's wonderful. But now you know him and Francis Collins. But I do love his testimony, and maybe I can pull it up a little bit later. But he really talks about how he was raised without any faith in God at all. And he was at a patient's bedside where she asked him a question in that moment about belief in God. And he realized he had to do some searching in his own life. And someone then later on gave him this book called Mere Christianity. And that's what he would read through and walk to the Lord in this discovery process of really being intellectually responsible with the knowledge that he had and respond to the Lord in that and how he came to faith in God. And I love it because he doesn't say, I had to throw away all my knowledge and check my mind at the door to come to Christ. And I want to address that this morning because the point really of his testimony is that you do not need to check your brain at the door. You are not intellectually inept if you believe in the existence of God. And I do like this about him because there's something to say, God is for those, cultures that believe in mysticism or just don't have education. But I love that these people of intelligence, of wisdom, of knowledge, of great influence in our society, say, no, I don't have to check my brain at the door. I actually can love God with my whole mind. I can love him with my whole heart, with my whole being. So, as we look at this topic today, there really truly is a crisis of belief in our society. We can go on talking about famous people, hundreds of famous people this morning, or influential people that believe in God. But would that ultimately lead you to a belief in God? Most likely not. It might be encouraging, it might be inspiring, but I don't know if it would necessarily just open a floodgate of belief into God. And we can talk about all kinds of arguments to the existence of God. You know that there's many, many arguments about the existence of God. I teach a class in Bible college and have taught it in the past, and it's called the Foundations of Christian Doctrine. And we look over 10 arguments as it relates to the existence of God. And there's lots of them. There's the teleos argument, the teleological argument is what it's called. And it has to be around purpose. Teleos is our Greek word for purpose. So even what we talked about last week, saying, hey, there's purpose in life. In other words, if there's purpose, that's connected to a God. That's connected to him. And some of these obviously overlap. Cosmological argument. There's the cosmos and the greater existence, right? There's greater things out there. There's the anthropological, I'm not going to say all these wrong. I'm going to get them all wrong. You guys know it's like speaking in tongues for me. Anthropological, there we go. Anthropological argument. The creation bears the image of the creator, right? We were created in the image and we bear that created image. Biological argument. Life. Where does life come from? Because there is the existence of life. We trace it back to the source. The source is God himself. The historical argument that God exists. We can go back through history and go look at these marked moments of history in every culture, every place that God was doing miracles. Bibliographical argument, the Bible itself. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God, it goes through. There's the ontology, the study of human beings, right? Of study of being. There's the argument that goes through all these different aspects of who we are. And we can go through all those, and obviously I wouldn't do a very good job of that this morning. And so I want to say, at the end of the day, we have to go deeper than just an intellectual argument. As humans, we're more than just intellects. We're more than just rational creatures. We're emotional and relational as well. And each of these bring us to a place to worship, intuitive place to worship God. Our answer to this, why believe there is a God, can't just be intellectual. It's also very experiential. It's very personal in this journey. Everybody has stories in this room that when I talk about these things, it's going to trigger for you, hopefully in good ways, triggers and moments in your life where you can go, I experienced something similar. I had something similar happen in my life, where God was revealing who he was to me, showing who he was. Sometimes we can find ourselves grappling with this big question, this deep question, in ways that we don't expect, in ways that we didn't consider or anticipate before. Last week, I shared about growing up in church and then as a teenager asking that question, God, if you're real, I want you to show me personally. I want to know, not because my mom says you're real or because church people tell me you're real. I want to experience you. I don't want just head knowledge, someone giving me information and arguments to why you're real, but I want to experience who you are. And I began these prayers for God to intervene in my life and to step into my life. And God revealed himself so powerfully to me in creation, right? And doing these moments, incredible things, and miracles of transforming my own heart where I didn't even try, and personal experiences of his presence coming. And I'm like, what is this presence? And it's so beyond me. You know what I'm talking about, right? Maybe you're here and you haven't experienced that yet, but God wants to invite you into that thing right there to just ask God, if you're real, show me that you're real. Show me that you're real. Perhaps you know what I'm talking about, or maybe you've experienced something more like this where you seemed close to God at one point in your life. You seemed near to him, but somehow something or someone came along and devastated you, and now you feel like God is distant from you. Maybe feels like he's on the other side of the planet and you're on this side. Or maybe you've been part of a church and you got burned by a friend or somebody who attended that church, a small group, a staff member, and you thought, if that's what God's people are like, I don't really want, to have something to do with them. And there's hurt there. And I understand these feelings. I understand these things. But I also wonder if you're here today, that those experiences, you have other experiences and you have other moments besides those ones that keep directing you, finding your way back to him. Finding your way, even though these things may speak something different. There's times when an experience just hits different than other experiences, doesn't it? It just strikes you different than the other things you've had in your life. Like you go and you see something so beautiful that you just know God is here. God's in this moment. He's in here. Like situations that hit so hard. I think about what Francis Collins, and we didn't get to watch his video, but he describes as pointers to God. Things that push us towards him. This moment that, we can say maybe 100% it doesn't prove the existence of God, but I know this one thing. I believe that it's literally directing me or nudging me towards the fact that there is a God. They move us deeply. And for example, one example I think of is that points beyond ourselves is the beauty that's in creation. Have you experienced something so magnanimous, so beautiful, you just stand back and are in awe? I mean, just go to the zoo. I mean, I don't know if they're awesome anymore, but they used to be so cool as a kid as you look at creation and go, wow, look at what is here. This is incredible. The species, watch Blue Planet and just have your mind blown. Things that you are under the water. You just don't see on a daily basis. I'm like, what is that? It looks like lips floating through the water. What is that? What in the world? But the beauty of creation, and look at this incredible picture I put up for you. Do you know where that is? That's the Grand Canyon. And if you don't think it's beautiful, it's because it's my photo I took 15 years ago on probably a really bad phone, some digital, So I know some of you are like, I don't know, Rachel. But that is the Grand Canyon. I'm standing there. I took this picture. You better love it. No, it took this picture. But obviously the picture is showing you it doesn't really do the Grand Canyon justice, because have you been there? Have you stood on the edge of that place and go, whoa, wow, this is astonishing. This is miraculous. This is majestic in expanse. This is so incredible. And you can be overtaken by its grandeur, literally the Grand Canyon. And you understand why it's called the Grand Canyon. It's not just canyon, it's grand. And then you begin to think about, wow, if God could create this, look at his love, so vast, so great, so deep. Have you hiked it? Let's talk about deep. The flow of his love that just continues on and on and on through that canyon, just constant. And I just think about the river that flows constantly through that canyon, but the river of God's love that flows on and on. And there's something in the beauty of creation that just gets you. Some of you are like, no, it doesn't. That's okay. Different things resonate with us. We all have experiential moments that we're willing just to pause just for a moment in life. Just take a breath. Look at the wonder and the awe that's there. And it leads us to a divine artist. Someone who can paint the hills so beautiful, ordered the beauty of the world. That the song in the Old Testament really speaks to it in Psalm 19:1, where it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. The heavens actually are declaring, and I like this visual because creation is literally declaring the glory of God. Have you been camping where there's no lights to take away and to dim the stars that are in the sky? Have you looked up at the Milky Way and just, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, and it's just the expanse of the heavens? Those moments in our life, God speaking to us. In the New Testament, in a book called Romans, where the author Paul writes this: "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made." So as we look at the beauty of creation, he's saying we can understand something of God himself. Beauty calls us out of ourselves into something bigger. It also resonates deeply within us. The Christian story proclaims that at the heart of the universe is the beautiful one, the one who made it. Not only does creation, or the beauty of creation, that could resonate with us, but also there's another thing that hits us, and maybe this will hit you even harder, some of us super hard, is a longing for justice. We've been through quite a bit in the last few years of our country. We've been through a lot. Bringing to awareness the injustice that's been there. Those have been abusing power and harming innocent people, taking advantage of the vulnerable, targeting people because of their gender, ethnicity, political, or religious views. And when it bothers us, it's speaking to something, it's resonating with something deep inside of us, that there needs to be justice. There needs to be a stop to this abuse. There needs to be something that changed. And the God in the Bible desires this too. And maybe that longing inside of us is pointing us, directing us, just like the beauty of creation is directing us to God himself. And Micah says it in this way, the prophet Micah 6:8, "And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." I think of this deep desire to see justice, for people to act kindly. It's not just a cultural value. It's not just something that we should possess as American citizens, not just something we feel on the inside, but it literally points to God, because God is concerned with justice and wants people to be concerned with fairness. In that same book I just mentioned a little bit ago, Romans, Paul writes in the second chapter, he says this, Romans 2, verses 14 and 15, "Even Gentiles who do not have God's written law show that they know his law when they instinctively obey it." Wow. So they don't even know what God desires. They don't even have the written, word, the Torah, the Old Testament. They don't have that in front of it. But here they're obeying instinctively from the inside, right? There's this justice inside of them. Even without having heard it, they demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts. For their own conscience and thoughts either accuse them or tell them they are doing right. Wow. So this longing for justice, this longing for right is a God-given thing in each person. Our conscious, making us aware of what is right or what is off and away from God. So our deep longing for justice points us to God, who desires people to act kindly and be just. Thirdly, this morning, there's another area to consider that points us to Christ. And I'm sure you guys can think of more than I am going to cover this morning, because this is my third point. This is what messages are made of, 3 points, right? But there's more. The third area that I believe points us, directs us, leans us towards the truth and reality that God exists, is a desire to feel connected. It's a desire to feel connected, or what we would call a relational desire. We all long to be in healthy, meaningful relationships, even when those relationships are difficult and we feel like, I don't want to be around anybody around me. We still want someone there at the moment to have pity on us, right? Or we have pity on them. We have pity on us. We are made for relationships. We are literally what I call hardwired for relationships. And our experience of relationships points us again toward God. Maybe you experienced this. Anybody have a baby? At some point, you had a child. You know what I'm talking about. Some of you are like, not yet, Rachel, but it's okay. You had a child. In that moment, the awe. What happened? You're like, there has to be a God. Even looking at that child, there's times where I look at my kids and wow, these are eternal beings. Or special days, special experiences, or just simply sitting around at the table with friends, connecting, sharing your lives, going beyond surface level conversation, talking about our hopes and our fears. And you're like, something deep inside of you begins to resonate, right? Something deep inside of you begins to be like, spark in you. This is what I was meant for, relationship. Everybody wants to feel like they belong. We all desire healthy, meaningful connections with other people. This is part of our nature. And even if at those points we want to feel like we want to cut people off or move people away, deep down, we still want somebody there for us. This is because we were made for relationships. We were made after the image of Creator God. Some point, we realize we're not just a collection of nervous system, synapses, chemical, like all this stuff, but God has created us a glorious human capable of giving and receiving love. So relationships point us to God, who is the definition of love. As 1 John 4:8 says, God is love. It literally relationships point us to the God who is love. The earliest Christ followers believed that this is what Jesus revealed about God, that God is love. A longing in every person to be known and to experience love. So whether you're in this room this morning and you believe in God or not, we all likely have these moments where something of this life deeply resonates with us, deeply, profoundly impacts us. It could be beauty, justice, relationships, or something, again, that I did not mention. And we all have these things lived out or experienced within ourselves. You know, those experiences that pointed you, directed you towards God himself, not because somebody told you, but because you experienced something in this life. There's something in our gut that knows. There's something powerful going on here. And it's a little bit like this musical lines here. Are you familiar with this? I took piano lessons when I was in elementary school. And you know the top and the bottom of those lines are meaning. Where's my musicians out there? I'm going to put you on the spot, right? The top line is the treble. Very, very good. Point on this side. The bottom line is the bass. I heard a couple answers. Yes. Top line's the treble, and the bottom line is the bass. Now, when you think of treble, these are the tones of higher frequency. You know, if you're playing the piano, and that's what I learned, is it's the higher keys, right, on the right side. My right hand is playing. And the bass is the lower, notes or whatever. And the treble, that higher frequency, which my voice is a higher frequency, and it's just really, I know, some people can't even hear me, because it's such a high frequency. My voice is such a light, wonderful. No, actually, it's pretty bad because the tone in my voice deletes messages. So I try to leave a message when I call people, and it automatically goes, beep, your message has been deleted. Would you like to re-record? Almost every time. And I have to remind myself, speak deeper. Hi, this is Rachel calling today. Okay, so there's that. But this symbol, treble, is that higher frequency. The lower bass, the lower deep tones, it's the treble, you something you hear, right? You hear it, but the bass is something you feel. Now, we've had big debates at our main campus back in Marin about how much bass should be in the room, right? And we have a pretty large platform that wraps around the front of the room and, seats for about 600-700 people. And so the bass is there's a huge, speaker underneath the stage. And it actually can release so much bass that literally the rumblings in your chest, you feel it. But it doesn't just stop there. It goes through the walls and into our neighbors across the street. I mean, we're a 3-story building, you guys. And they're like all the way, I mean, it's a busy street, 2 lanes. They have a fence and then their house. And they're like, we can feel the bass over here. Because the bass goes deep in you, right? It vibrate. Have you ever been to a concert where the bass is pumping? Or, at a stop sign where someone drives up next to you, it's like, and you're like, really? Really? Like, is it not enough in your car? I mean, I'll feel it right here next to me, And you feel the vibrations. You feel something so deep. And here's the truth. In our culture, we're surrounded by a lot of treble, right? Social media, sound bites, news feeds, advertising, entertainment that are speaking and fighting for our attention. But amidst that sea of noise, amidst those higher tones, there's something deeper that is resonating with our hearts and calling to us. And it calls deep within us, and it's called the Spirit of God calling to our hearts. The presence of God resonates like a bass note within our very being. Say, I'm calling for, I'm speaking to you. It's deep in here. It's not just in the mind. God is not just somebody we learn about or even talk about, but someone to experience deep down. So my challenge for all of us this morning is to focus on that last idea, that last thought, that last pointer. The key of it all is relationship. God's greatest desire is relationship with us. He went to great lengths to make that possible, didn't he? When he sent his son, his only son, Jesus. In the book of Revelation, the final book of the Bible, Jesus is speaking to the church, and he says this in Revelation 3:20. He says, "Here I am." I like just that statement right there. I'm right here. I'm right here. Maybe you felt far away, or you feel like God is at a distance or on the other side of the world, or does he, you even had this question, does he exist? And you've come this morning with that question still in your heart, still pondering it. He's saying, here I am. I'm right here next to you. And I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice, something resonating deep within me. If anyone hears my voice and opens that door, I'm going to come in and we're going to eat. I mean, this is my kind of God. We're going to have a meal. We're going to sit down, relationship. We're going to have and get to know each other. We're going to be in this intimate relationship with each other. Our response is to say, God, I open the door. I open the door to the possibility of who you are. So back to that question we had last week. Let's all ask it again. God, if you're real, make yourself real to me. Let me hear you knocking. Let me hear those deeper tones. Let me experience the reality of who you are. And if you've already been on a journey with Christ, ask him to take you deeper. Ask him to walk you deeper into the revelation of who he is. Deeper into that place. It's the most important journey that you'll ever take. The greatest exploration that you'll ever undertake. This is something that we are doing in community, though, that we're not doing alone. And I'm going to ask our worship team to come join me again on the stage this morning, because this journey that we're in is not just for ourselves, but we are with a community of people in this journey. Exploring, seeking, finding our way to God, or back to God. So please join us in the next, we'll just have 6 more weeks, right? Am I counting right? 5 weeks? I don't know, I can't count. 1, 2, 5 more weeks. Thank you. She corrected. I have 6 weeks in my notes. It's 5. 5 more weeks of questions. Keep with us in this journey. Next week, we go into a big one. Why? God, if there is a God, and why then does he allow pain and suffering? Whew. A question I think we've all had. But I want you to join us, if you can, for not just these next 5 weeks. Wednesday nights, we're going deeper. We're going to watch videos. I promise I'll have it queued up well for you. We'll watch a video and discuss even what it means to believe that God exists. But as we go into response time, I'm going to go ahead and have us stand to our feet. I want us to do something that we do usually around the first Sunday of the month, and that's what it is. But I want us to take communion together. And if you're here and you say, I'm not a believer yet. I haven't started this journey yet. I'm just asking these questions. I'm, again, so glad you're here. Keep asking those questions. But I want you to be able to pray with those with you and say, hey, I'm just asking him to make himself real to me. Like, God, if you're truly standing out the door today, I want to open that door. That's where we're at. So let's open the door together. And I want you to find a group of 2 or 3 people, maybe, we get 3 or 4. It's okay. You can make them a little bigger. I know how you are. I mean, Emily tried 3 times to get your attention when we were welcoming each other, because we like to chat in here. But I want you to pray together. And I want you to pray this together. God, if you're real, make yourself real to us as a community. Make yourself real even more to us as a community. Some of you are like, I know God's real. Then go deeper. Let's go deeper with him together.